Jonah is an epic story found at the end of the Old Testament about a man who resists his call from God. Although he is called by God, he runs from his call, and when he ran from his call, he found himself in a storm. And sometimes when we run from God, we find ourselves in a big mess. Jonah also endangered others in his storm, and when we run from God, we not only endanger ourselves, but we might endanger others. And you might say, well, you know what? I'm not running from God. All things are well. Maybe it's because you associate, you're with someone who is running from God and has caught you up in their storm and their mess of life. What if we don't even have any knowledge of our purpose in life? We're still running from something. And although Jonah was running from his call in life and running from God, the way the story presents it is that he was running from his fears. Because often when we run from our fears in life, we're running from the potential that God has for us. Jonah didn't think he was worthy, but God deemed him worthy and said that he would do a more than adequate job with his task. And God has given you gifts. He's given all of us skills and gifts to do mighty and great things. And so God deems us worthy. We just have to follow that passion and that lead. But Jonah, even though he eventually followed God and God's lead and was successful, he was really bitter. He was actually angry at God. What makes you wonder then, how often have you been angry at God? Or how often have you been angry at the world? Anger is something I deal with a lot in my life. Most of the anger that I deal with is repressed anger. It's the anger that's pinned up, unresolved, and never let out. It's easy to deal with someone who is visibly angry. You just sort of avoid them. You don't want to get in their wake. But for someone who has repressed anger, it can come on all of a sudden and you not even realize it. Maybe this is something you're dealing with. Everything looks calm on the outside and you're unfazed. And the world thinks that everything is good with you. But somewhere deep inside, something is bothering you. Something is going on. You might call it anxiety or worry or stress. You might stay busy. You might try to avoid things, but it possibly could be repressed anger. I know I had all the signs for repressed anger. One of my friends said that I was sarcastic, not only sarcastic, that I had the spiritual gift of sarcasm. That's a sure sign of repressed anger. There's nothing complimentary about that type of mention. Or what about being passive aggressive, or always being tired, or always feeling that you haven't finished the task? All these signs are signs of repressed anger in my life. And what ends up happening is that there is always some bystander that gets me worked up. And they're really innocent. Maybe you've been around someone who blew up on you for no reason at all. Because perhaps they had repressed anger and the issue had nothing to do with you at all. Or maybe you're the one who blew up on someone for no reason at all. Because all of that repressed anger has just been settling in and it's coming to a boiling point. And that happens to me too often. Too often, I like to admit, people, my friends, my family have been in my wake of when I've boiled over. And it's like they're at the wrong place in the wrong time, and they just happen to be my discussion partner at the time, and suddenly I blow up. And I want to say that's something of my past because it's something I've been really trying to work on. I've been trying to work on the wrath of Steve. Jonah, though, he's someone you can admire because he did not have repressed anger. His anger was true and it was real, but he expressed it. And there's a couple of things that really inspire me about the way that Jonah expressed his anger that we can learn from. The first is that he plainly yelled at God. He screamed at God. He let his anger out at God. The second is that he sulked. He threw his arms up. He left his place and he sulked at God. And the third is that he argued with God. He reckoned with God. These are all great things because It's not the wrath of God that we should worry about. It's the wrath of Jonah, or the wrath of Steve, or the wrath of our friend, or the wrath of ourselves. God never is presented as angry in this story in the Bible. And that's something to learn from. That God is patient, God is true, God is with us. We're the ones who are impatient. We're the ones who leave and are absent. And we're the ones who are angry. But what if we take our anger out on God instead of our neighbor? Maybe that's the ultimate lesson of Jonah. That when we take our anger out on God and we scream and yell at God and we sulk with God and we argue with God, the first thing that is happening is that we're not doing this to our neighbor. We are not harming our neighbor. We're not screaming at them. We're not spewing hate at them. We're not yelling at them. We're not blowing up on them for no good reason. But instead, we're directing all of that toward God. And the beauty of this story is that God can take it. God accepts it. The writer is almost inviting us to live into Jonah's story, to yell at God, to scream at God, to reckon with God, to sulk at God. Because not only does it allow us not to harm our neighbor, it also invites us into a relationship with the ultimate one who accepts us. The story of Jonah ends abruptly. We don't know what ultimately happens to Jonah. And that is why Jonah is just like our life. Our life is an unfinished product. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, but we do have a choice. And when it comes to how we deal with others, think twice. That's what I have to remind myself. Think twice of how you treat others. Is your life full of love, acceptance, patience? Or is your life full of anger, hatred, and repression? You have a choice, as Jonah did. He decided to direct all of that anger to God. When we do, we're directing the anger at the one who will listen to us, accept us, and love us.